Today we have two Panda dial Daytonas before us. One is real, one is fake. Can you tell the difference? This is how we're gonna tell the difference. So the first thing we notice when we look at the dial side of this watch, three things that I would focus on the dial side are rehaut, color of the dial, the actual fitment of the bezel. So if you look at the rehaut on the original Rolex has a really fine finish, which is actually a circular grain. The rehaut on the replica watch is very noticeably different in certain shades of light. So what you want to do is pass different light refractions across that rehaut, and then you can really determine if that rehaut is authentic or not. The second thing is the dial color. One of these dials is slightly darker and one of these dials is slightly more white. That really jumps out to you, but even when you have a side-by-side, you know that they look different. You just don't know which one is real and which one's fake. And then lastly, the bezel, if you hold it to the side, you can actually see a small gap of light between the ceramic bezel and the case. This is not something that would pass Rolex quality control. That ceramic bezel has to be pressed all the way down to the case, sits around a gasket, which basically determines the water tightness of the case. Now we're gonna look at the bracelet. In this case, this replica factory is using 904L steel, which is exactly the same alloy that Rolex produces in their very own foundry, and they make all their stainless steel watches from 904 steel. The color, the density, the weight, it's all gonna be very similar to Rolex. The Easy Link has a different sound, a different feel. So there are very small quality differences if you're one that has handled many Rolexes. So the next talking point is the case finish in general. On some Rolex sport models, you have lap polished sides. In this particular case, the Daytona does not have lap polished sides. It's quite rounded like a Datejust, but it still has a very particular finish and a very high quality finish that Rolex achieves. As far as case and bracelet finish goes, these replica factories are basically nailing it on the head. They focus very heavily on certain references that sell very well, and they're actually getting to the point where some people can't distinguish real from fake until you take the case back off, which is what we're going to do later. Now that we've removed the case back, we're going to move on to the movement. The movement is really what solidifies the authenticity for me when we're looking at any watch. Right off the bat, you can kind of see that the surface finish of these rhodium plated brass bridges are slightly different. The surface finish on the replica is levels below what Rolex is achieving in this 4130 caliber. But what's really amazing is that this is a completely reverse engineered movement, which means that these replica factories have someone go out, purchase an authentic watch, they bring it back, basically dissect it, and every single component of this watch, aside from a few, which I'll mention in a moment, are 100% reverse engineered, fully functional, same configuration on the dial side, same location of all the components. All of the jewel locations are essentially, they have the same XY coordinates because they are making the 4130 movement with a few downgrades because they don't have the budget. If they want to sell these watches for less than $1,000 US, they simply can't create things like a breakaway overcoil, a free sprung balance. So that's what we're going to look at next. So in this area that we're focusing on here, you can see that there is a clear difference between regulating organ, which is the balance and hairspring. The replica watch has a flat hairspring, and it also has a very poorly blued hairspring. Rolex uses what's called parachrome, which is an alloy that they create, and it's a very vibrant blue, and it also has an overcoil, which means that the hairspring is on two different levels if you look from the side. This allows for the hairspring to breathe concentrically, eliminating some isochronism faults, which is really just them striving for the utmost accuracy, which we all know that Rolex is the GOAT when it comes to chronometer testing on an industrial scale. This small part here that is circled is what's called the curb regulator. That does not exist in free sprung balances because that is then replaced by inertia weights, which we circle here. These inertia weights allow you to move the mass further or closer to the center of the rotation of the balance, which is essentially like a ballerina or a figure skater. When they get really close and tight to the center of axis of rotation, they speed up, and when they open up, they slow down. That's the exact same principle. That's one way of regulating a balance. That's called a free sprung balance. The other way is curb regulator, which is actually two pins that are resting on either side of the hairspring, and you're actually changing the effective length of the hairspring. The shorter the hairspring, the faster; the longer the hairspring, the slower. The two different ways that you can regulate a watch, which is everything to do about the way that they manufacture it. So in this case, all current Rolex calibers have free sprung balances with overcoils. So if you see any of what we've flagged here, then you know you're looking at a fake movement at least. If one part is fake on a watch, it's most likely the entire watch. So look for these particular things when you open the case back. The other detail here is actually being able to open the case back. If you go to a dealer and they refuse to do that for you, I personally worked for Rolex. It does not void warranty as long as you have the right tools and you don't damage the case back. This is really strictly for authentication, and it's hugely important. Now, it's worth mentioning that both the frequency and the power reserve of the replica is the same as a real 4130s. However, when you look at 5-position timing results, as you can see here, it's drastically different. The Rolex obviously outperforms the replica. So that will always be something you can compare. And if you have a delta that's 15, 20, 25 seconds and it's a relatively new Rolex, you know that there's a problem with that watch. Now, your box isn't just a box. It comes with warranty card, manual booklet, chronometer hang tag, and sometimes even the reference and serial number hang tag, which is white, which usually comes on the watch. Chronometer hang tag, which has a very distinct green color. There's actually some black marbling that is integrated into the chronometer hang tag. And then the warranty card, which is a big one. The warranty card should always have a date written on it. If it doesn't, it means that it was never sold at an AD, or at least nobody filled in that warranty card, which is a red flag. But your warranty card has two things that you should look for. Number one is NFC. So turn NFC on your phone, hold it up to the card. If it doesn't pull up the Rolex website, then you know there's no NFC chip in the card. You can actually see the chip on the surface of the card. It's wedged between the two layers of the card. It's a small square in the upper corner. The second thing you want to look for is that UV stamp. It's the Rolex Jubilee stamp, and it's on the card. You can obviously see in the side-by-side, the authentic Rolex card is much more defined. The UV stamp exists on the fake card, but it just doesn't have that same brightness to it. They simply don't have the margin that luxury products have. They don't focus on quality. They try to achieve as close to that quality as possible without having the same amount of cost. But again, we're always talking with side-by-side comparisons. It's always good to have some reference. Every part of every watch, box, paper that you want to look at to really give yourself that assurance that everything you're looking at is authentic. So that's it for today's video. Let us know in the comments below what watch or reference number you want to see next. Otherwise, we hope you enjoyed the content. If you did, hit that like button. Also hit that subscribe button so we can pour a lot more resources into our content. And we'll see you at Wrist Check.